Now it's time that I show you one of the most unique and I would say one of the most interesting ships in the game. And well, this is the first ever actual Yan-Jung ship that we have received. This is the Can-Yue Assault Logistic or Logistic Assault. It has a very weird name, but this is definitely the first ever actual Can-Yue ship. I mean, technically the actual Can-Yue ship, because the other ones are prototypes and the actual battlecruiser is still not released. So this kind of makes me excited to see what other Yan-Jung ships we will see in the game. I'm personally excited about that battleship. Now let me quickly go and show you the tech tree here. So here we can take a look at the Yan-Jung tech tree, and there is the Logistic Assault, there is the Can-Yue, which is still not released, and there is the prototype. Now besides the Logistic Assault, we only have prototypes in the game, so that's why I'm saying that it's the first ever actual Can-Yue ship and the first ever Yan-Jung ship in the game, the actual ship. Now let's take a look at the trade description. It has a very nice throw bonus, plus 25% medium decomposer optimal range, plus 25% medium decomposer damage, plus 1 warp stability, and it can fit command bursts. Advanced medium decomposer upgrade bonus per level will give you plus 5% medium decomposer damage, plus 5% medium decomposer optimal range. The advanced remote shield operation bonus per level will give you plus 20% remote shield booster boost amount, minus 75% remote shield booster capacity unit, plus 80% remote shield booster effective range, and we have a third skill. Advanced logistic drone operation bonus per level will give you plus 40% drone shield boost amount, plus 20% drone effective hit points. And the advanced battlecruiser command bonus per level will give you plus 5% shield and plus 10% warp speed. So overall, this is kind of a logistic battlecruiser, logistic ship, but also combined with some offensive capabilities. Now this ship has 4 drones, 4 high slots, 4 medium slots, 5 low slots, 3 combat and 3 engineering rigs. A very decent overall defense. Cargo hold is also not that bad. Now Yan-Jung ships are known to have very good shields and very good hulls, but they are definitely not armor tanks, so do not armor tank this ship. Pick a shield tank. Shield tank is basically at the moment the only valid option. Decent capacitors, very good recharge rate, it can lock 8 targets. Overall, the other stats aren't that bad. It's very comparable and very similar to the other battlecruisers that we have in the game. So it'll be very interesting to see how will this thing perform. This is actually my first time trying it out, so I'm excited. Now let me show the builds that I have come up with. This thing has 110.76 DPS, and I'm using the medium jetstone decomposers. Now the thing about the decomposers, they have a very good optimal range. Most of them are basically sniping weapons, and they have very bad tracking but a very good range, and their fall off is very sharp. So above 82.5 kilometers, your damage will be drastically impacted because you will not be able to damage the target. So you should be using this ship at its optimal decomposer range. That's where you will be applying the most damage. This is also the first battlecruiser that can fit large drones, and I have some offense ogres installed. Although you can equip medium ones and small ones if you like. Although I would say always carry multiple types of drones, because smaller ships can be a problem. After all, decomposers have terrible tracking, and anything that gets below, anything that gets too close to you, you are not going to be able to hit them easily. So drones would be your, I would say, one of the primary ways to defend your ship against smaller targets that get too close to the ship. Now you can fit the super heavy logistic drones, which is of course to be expected, since the super heavy ones are kind of designed to be for capitals, but large ones are basically the limits, and you can fit any large drone, which means that you can technically place mining drones in this thing, but I don't know why would you do that. But yeah, you have the option to slap the large mine drones on the Can-Yue Logistic Assault. I don't know why would anyone do that, but you can do it. So yeah, and just to show that you can, I'll just equip some mining drones for the lols and for the giggles, because yeah, you can fit them, but there is no purpose with having these drones on this ship. So yeah, I wouldn't be using that. I also recommend you have different types of drones as well, because you want to be able to counter yellow harners, which is going to be important for PvP later on. But I'll be mostly using the large drones today, because they have the most DPS, and your ship doesn't really get a damage bonus for any drone, but it has a hit point bonus, so large drones are definitely going to benefit a bit more. In all sorts, dual adaptives, a booster, capacitor battery, and a micro warp drive. Now as for the rigs, well, as usual, since this thing is kind of expensive, kind of rare, having expensive rigs on it is actually not a bad idea. I believe the kill value of this ship, the raw hull, is basically about 8 or 11 billion. So it's in the Navy battleship territory. So having good rigs to enhance its durability as much as possible is definitely a good idea. And I'm very happy with the shield amount. It has a very good shield volume, 47,000 in shield and some decent resistances. Now as for the implants, the main, I would say, problem at the moment is we don't have any Decomposer implant. And this tells me that down the road, very soon, when they release Yan-Jung ships, that they'll make a implant for them. So the maximum performance and the overall maximum damage output on this ship is quite limited at the moment. But when we do get a Decomposer implant, I believe that one is going to be pretty strong. The DPS will skyrocket, as expected with other implants. But you do have drones, and drones have 2 implants, well actually 3, but they have 2 DPS implants. I personally like to use the bomber tactic, although I'll also be making a video about the other implant. I'm actually making them as this video is being uploaded. I'm already working on the new implant video for both the turrets and for both for drones and fighters. But the bomber tactic is at the moment one of the only options for DPS increase, because you know it still can make your drone DPS go crazy, and if you have this implant, then you can use the ship as a drone boat. It actually surprisingly works really well. Works with medium and large drones. There's also a lot of different builds that we can do. We can also use missiles on this ship for a troll build, but again, Decomposers have just that sweet range, and this thing is actually surprisingly not that slow. This sword-looking ship is it's not slow, definitely. There are other battlecruisers that are much more slower, so this is kind of in the medium category when it comes to speed. But 251,000 hit points, this is actually a lot of hit points, 77, 82, 86 and 78% resistances. Probably one of the more tanky battlecruisers that I have used. I think the Prophecy 2 command kind of are in the same territory, although they're different ships. And the overall speed is also really good based on my rigs that I currently have. I'll actually improve the speed a bit more afterwards. And it has a large booster. The command burst modules are very useful. You can enhance and extend the range of the disruptors, scanners and webs from 13 to 14.93 kilometers, and for the webs from 14 to I think 16 kilometers, which is also very solid. And the drones are also not that solid, have a lot of hit points. I have to say it's a bit weird to have a battlecruiser yeet a large drones, but it is also kind of interesting. Very interesting, because this is the first ever ship that's not a battleship that can fit large drones in the game. Reminds me of the Ishtar that can fit the sentry drones. I believe that's also coming up in the game. Now this ship has a assault recharge mode, which is I expected it to be different, but here you can take a look at the stats. I actually expected this to increase the damage and basically to enhance the logistic modules, but it doesn't increase the performance of the logging modules. It does increase the signature radius, and it does also improve your capacitor recharge. And now the ship is actually capacitor stable, which is fantastic news. But the recharge mode is not going to have a lot of use for DPS at the moment, at least. But it will be very nice for logistic purposes. For example, if you build a ship to be a loggy, then it's definitely going to benefit quite a bit from the on the special mode. It's kind of a very similar to the recharge mode that we have on the other logistic battlecruisers, logistic cruisers. Although this is, I would say, I think it's a bit different because the recharge mode does some other things here. Now, 11.47 minutes and 47 seconds is the capacitor runtime, and when I turn on the logistic mode, that is definitely going to be, yeah, it is now stable. So in this case, it can actually make your capacitor stable if you're stuck in a long range engagement, but then the enemy can actually approach you. Overall, a very interesting ship that can be used in a smaller fleet, although you'll be the primary target, that's for sure. These things are expensive, and everyone would want to have a kill on these things. Now you can also do the same build with damage control, and this will basically enhance the passive resistance a little bit on hull, armor, and shield. Although it will sacrifice a bit of capacitor runtime, but in the end, it doesn't really. It shouldn't really affect that a lot, since you do have that recharge mode. And I believe the recharge mode with a troll build with torpedo launchers, with large torpedo launchers, is actually a very interesting idea. You can do that. I mean, it is kind of a logistic ship, and logi bait ships do tend to have missile launchers because they save capacitor, and in a lot of ways I would say missiles are the secondary option if you don't like decomposers at the moment. At least you can use the missiles with the missile implant with large or medium torpedo with large rapid missiles or medium torpedo launchers or rapid missiles. This ship could be very interesting if built as a tank. You also do have drones as your another source of DPS. So in terms of the potential to be a very nice bait logi ship, I believe this ship has one of the highest potentials to be the nastiest, because it has two different weapon platforms that it can utilize effectively. So there's a lot of hidden potential in this ship, and I honestly do like that a lot. Now let me quickly show you a build that would kind of be focused for logistic purposes, although I'll be honest, I wouldn't be flying this ship in a fleet as a logi like ever, because I'll be the primary target. You can bet that this thing is gonna get focused down very quickly once it enters the grid, because it's expensive, it's rare, and everyone wants to have a very nice kill. So flying this thing in a fleet, well, at least in a big fleet, could be a death sentence for this thing. Now you also can fit some large group ship boosters. It's also a very nice idea to have them with logistic drones for a full-on logi build. And you can also enhance the capacitor by adding more capacitor batteries, but my capacitor here is basically maxed out because of all the modules that I have. So overall, I would fly with something that's still decently tanked. I wouldn't be worried about the capacitor, because you can rely on your fleet to supply the capacitor to you. Group capacitor boosters and things like that can supply the capacitor to your ship. So I believe capacitor is not going to be a big problem down the road, in a big fleet. In a small fleet maybe, but you still have that recharge mode that can help a lot. So there's that. But again, maybe in a small fleet, in a small roam, but still you will be focused down there as well. So no matter where you go with this thing, don't fly glass, because it's gonna get focused down so fast it's not gonna even be funny. So let me just quickly show the active stats on this thing. I honestly do like how this ship works. It is honestly the only ship of its type, I believe. There is no other assault, logi, whatever the name is, ship in the game. We have logis, we have assault ships, but never both. And this kind of does both in a very interesting way, although, as I already said, it is limited by, limited. If there were no implants, this ship would be amazing, but implants did change the game quite a bit, so that's the only drawback. No Decomposer implant for this thing. Now you can also do, I said there is no DPS implant, but you can use the remote shield implant. That's a perfect implant for this thing, and would definitely do the job really well. No, I said never fly glass, and I honestly stand by that. Don't fly the ship as a glass, but you can technically do something like this, which is kind of hilarious. This is one of my favorite builds in the game for PvP. Full DPS, but it also has a very nice tank. Although passive, but it still can withstand a crap ton of damage, as proven time and time again. So with this kind of build, you can do several different. Well, you can focus on different, I guess, damage types or different weapon systems. You can keep the Decomposers if you prefer to have a long-range encounter. You can also use missiles if you like missiles, also working really well. And you also can focus on drones with missile launchers installed in the highest slots, because you can easily drop this ship at very close range from your target, scramble them, web them, and basically unleash hell on their ship. That idea on this thing surprisingly works really well, despite having the limitations in the implants. It still does the job really well, and shockingly, it's actually very fun to have that build, to have this build. This is the build I use on Macariel, on the Cello, Cinnabal. Most of my PvP ships have a very similar build to this, if not the exact same copy. Now I also did fit some command burst modules. They can be used for defense. If something is approaching you, if someone is faster than you, you will web them, you will scramble them before they scramble and web you. So you still will be able to maintain that range advantage. After all, getting close to you if you have Decomposers is a death sentence, because you can't hit anything up close with Decomposers. 1.6 km per second is the micro speed, which honestly is not that bad. I've seen slower ships with this build work just fine. I used some, and this speed is pretty decent. Shouldn't give you a lot of problems. It's also pretty fast in terms of warp speed. These things have very nice bonus on warp speed. They also have extra +1 stab, so you can fit 3 warp core optimizers and have 10 points, and basically 3 scrummers is the only thing that's going to be able to hold you. 2 scrummers or anything else along those lines is going to be ineffective against this ship. You can also replace the skirmish for a shield command burst module, but I didn't do that because I believe that having extra scrambler and web range is a bit more important, mostly for defense, at least if you're using the Decomposers. Now this is the nanocore. I focused the DPS on the Decomposers. The stat is on the Decomposers, but you also can fix the nanocore stats for logi purposes. Again, that's entirely up to the player and entirely up to the purpose that the player decides to have the ship for. Now, in my case, I will probably use the ship for a PvP. For PvP, that will definitely attract attention. And if you do plan to use this thing for PvP, be very careful. You have all, like, no one can judge you if you're playing very carefully with this thing.
Docking
it's super rare.
Accepted.
It's bling as hell. Everyone wants to kill it. So playing smart, playing careful is absolutely allowed, and that's basically how you should play Eve. So green light from me. Now I mentioned the drones. I would actually say drones at the moment should be its primary source of DPS, although I say should be, but based on the implants whatever we have and based on how things work, drones in this case, at least now without the Decomposer implants, would be a bit better, a lot better actually, than relying on the Decomposers, because we have the Bombard Tactic implant, which is still broken as hell, still overpowered as hell, still wrecks everything in seconds, and you can get about 3.5 thousand DPS easily with this thing, with the Bombard Tactic implant, which honestly is not bad DPS. That's more than enough to wreck most cruisers, wreck frigates, and even wreck, in some cases, wreck battlecruisers and battleships. Of course, if they have a good tank build, it's not going to do much, because that's just how it goes. A good tank will beat high DPS, but nowadays, since most of the builds out there are pretty bad, it should not be problematic at all to basically delete the average ship out there. So that's why the Bomber Tactic is definitely what I would use on this. The Bomber Tactic implant with drones, with DPS drones, large, medium depending on the target, and using rapid or large rapid missiles or medium torpedo launchers in the high slots. That's how I imagined, that's how I will use the ship. Basically, that's the idea behind it. I'm just looking for a second drone damage amplifier to get this thing up and running, and then I'll be showing you the DPS outside the station. Unfortunately, you can't really see the maximum DPS with the bombardier acting. It just gives you a 300% bonus, but it still to this day doesn't show you the DPS. For what reason, I have absolutely no idea. I honestly have absolutely no idea why they just don't add that, but I guess they have their reasons. I'll actually have to ask that. I'm very interested to see how that will go, but this will be basically one of the ways on how I would fit this ship. Now I would change the medium slots, since in this case I would go full close range. Decomposers in this case would be kind of useless. I would go full close range with rapid missiles, large rapid missiles or torpedo launchers. I would usually have one scrambler and 3 webs, or a combination of webs and scramblers depending on the target, and I would be warping at 0 from the target, since doesn't really range doesn't really matter with the bomber tactic. Actually, it is recommended to warp as close as possible to the target, because that way you can apply the damage immediately, because drones have to travel, so you want to land as close as possible so your drones start applying damage as fast as possible. Now let me undock and let me show you the active stats. Now it might seem like the ship has more paper DPS, but because of the implant, it will have actually more DPS with drones than Decomposers. At the moment, I'm not really saying that this is going to be a permanent solution. When we get Decomposer rigs, might be better, might be much better, we will see. But 1.2 thousand DPS with bombs, and you can triple that with bombs. So yeah, you get about 3,000, 3,500 total DPS with a build like this. And if missiles, with missiles, it might be a bit more, might be a bit less, but it's generally around that mark. So surprisingly, it is scary. It is scary. So definitely usable and definitely interesting. Not really sure if anyone would expect to see a bombard assault logistic Can-Yue, but
docking request
I have no idea. Maybe we will find out. We will find out if that's the case. Now there is this new implant that I do plan to cover in another video, but I just want to show you a quick description. Now this implant, if we compare it to the bombard tactic implant, it does give you more stable DPS. Doesn't give you the crazy alpha spike as the bombard tactic implant, but it is still good. It is very good actually. Does enhance the speed. It can also it has different modes that I'll get into when I have a dedicated video for this implant. But I like it. I mean, if you have this implant, you can use this implant instead of the bombard tactic implant. That's just how it would go. Should give you a very decent DPS output, and overall it has a very interesting description, and I believe it has also a learning curve. So I will have to sit on my ass and basically learn the implant, how it works, which is I'm totally fine with that. I like learning new things. I mean, it's Eve. It's Eve. Complaining and crying won't get me anywhere. I have to sit on my ass and learn how things work. Now, let me see what kind of build I'll do next. I mean, honestly, there is like a million different builds they can do, and now I'll try something that is not going to be as good now, but when we get a Decomposer implant, it might actually be really good. But as mentioned on the start of the video, the Decomposers are good as a sniping, and they're good sniping weapons. So I can extend its optimal range even further, and I can also extend the range even more by using basically any implant available with a tracking computer range correction general unit. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'll have the bomber tactic implant, since I still trust the bombs a bit more than the Decomposers, and I'll add the range correction, which is now extending the range a bit more. The DPS is going to drop a little bit, but that's fine. 75 km is now the optimal range, which for medium weapons is actually not bad, and with a micro warp drive this thing is fairly fast, so it can work as a kite. I've been thinking about a large micro-operative kite build. I think that one will be quite hilarious, or a large afterburner. It can work surprisingly really well. 82.53 kilometers is the maximum range now with the range Decomposer rigs. I never thought that I'll be using the Decomposer rigs, but here I am. I'm actually using them. Now this would be a sniper Can-Yue, which with a implant, if the implant is very similar to how the pulse crystal and focus crystal work, would basically mean that you can get very nice damage with very nice optimal range. And these things are known as good snipers, so let's see what's the maximum range going to be like. And I believe down the road the actual Can-Yue ship will have even better range, since this is kind of a logi ship but a combat ship as well. Other Can-Yue ships will have even better optimal range, and I can tell you right away that down the road they will probably extend and buff these ships when more Can-Yue ships and more Yan-Jung ships are released to the game. Now, a PvE build. Well, if you want to have some fun with this ship, if you want to use it, I would personally, well, if you like to do high-sec PvE, then you can use this thing for fun, I guess. In my case, I would probably just keep using it for PvP, but I know PvP is not the only thing in the game. PvE is also a very, very big part of it, so can you use it for PvE? Yes, you can. And in this case, would be a medium to long-range sniper. You can focus we can focus on DPS with the burst adapters, and for the modules, well, at long distances you are not going to be needing a Nosferatu or a neutralizer, but you know, having a command burst module can be beneficial for extra shield, just in case the pirate ships are hitting you. It can help with tank a little bit. A skirmish command also can help. If you accidentally allow something small to get close to you, can weapon scramble them and then slowly take range. And in order to weapon scramble them, you fit a weapon scrambler, of course, so that you are not completely vulnerable to small ships that accidentally get close to you. Sometimes they spawn for some reason very close to your ship. Now, in the low slots, well, for drones, I'll be using the large drones because of the damage that they give out. Now, in the low slots, you can use one tracking computer. Here you can actually fit. Now, here you have a lot of options, honestly. I will go with one particle accelerator, or however these modules called. I'll just call them particle accelerators because they have their own. The Decomposers have their own damage mod. Here I would usually place a large booster, although at long range a large booster isn't really needed, but again, just for a precaution in case anything gets close to you, a large booster is definitely going to help to keep your ship alive. And for the last slots, well, you can go for full DPS if you like. You can actually go with full DPS mods with one micro operative, but in my case here I'll just use a capacitor battery and make a moderate build, I would say. Since I have some free power grids, yeah, I can just do that, and this will help with the capacitor a little bit more. So let's see how this little boat will perform. Now, have the bomber tactic implant, because, well, that's the at the moment it is still the best implant that you can do. Now, this ship with Decomposer, see, this does have some very nice alpha damage. Decomposers are, if I have to describe Decomposers as a weapon system, they feel like the beam lasers, but with pulse laser range and with a different fall-off mechanic. So you can hit targets below your optimal, but you also must not let anything get too close to you because of the bad tracking. Basically anything below 20-30 kilometers is too close, and if it's fast you might be in trouble, especially if it's fast. Fast ships are definitely the main enemy of Decomposers. But at the same time, You also must not be too far away from the target. Should stick about plus minus 10 kilometers from your optimal range. And this makes it a bit difficult to use, and I believe down the road the developers will add a close range version of the Decomposers. These Decomposers are basically long range weapons, and there's only one type of Decomposers available in the game. Basically, they're comparable to the medium beam lasers or comparable to the medium artillery cannons. There is no close range version of these weapon systems. Although if there is a close range weapon system, close range Decomposer weapon system, they will probably have very similar attributes, although their tracking will be much better, and this makes them, I would say, a bit difficult to use, since you really have to know how to place your ship and how to move your ship in order to be able to apply a full damage. A perfect example of that was that the Yan-Jung destroyer prototype. That thing was very fun to fly. It has very short range. It has decent tracking, but you really had to be within the range. And these weapons, the composers really rely on being within the optimal range in order to do damage. If I were to move up at 70 kilometers, it would probably miss the target completely. So plus minus 10 kilometers is basically what I would be keeping on the range that I would be keeping from my targets. Now, doesn't mean that the weapon system is bad. I mean, at the moment, this is, I don't want to say the weakest weapon system, because if we remove the implants, it's actually really solid. I mean, there are ships that already use Decomposers. Ships that have a bonus on all turrets can use Decomposers, like the Celestis, Scorpions. They can equip them. And I believe when we do get a battleship, a Yan-Jung ship, and that is not that far away, I would guess that's maybe in the next 2 months we get more of these Yan-Jung ships, because I expect to see Wormhole Space. I expect to see a lot more new content. I mean, the Kalevala Expanse is due to be released very soon, and that is also going to be a very interesting new addition to the game, especially if they make it like the Abyssal Space, open world Abyssal Space, where other players can get in. That's basically how it feels like. Overall, a very interesting mechanic, and I'm keeping a very close eye on it. Now, you might be wondering, how do you obtain this ship? Well, this is actually, well, I say a gift, although you will be paying Omega for 3 years in order to get this ship. It is a Omega reward, and I'm personally not really a fan of being a Omega reward only ship, so down the road I believe that there's going to be more ways of getting your hands on this ship. There's 100% going to be more ways to get this ship. 100% is going to be a blueprint when other Yan-Jung ships are released. So its price until then is going to be very high. I mean, its insurance price is going to be very high until these things are a lot more commonly available, although there's also the chance that the price is gonna skyrocket, since, you know, players being players, Eve players being Eve players, they'll be greedy, and the Yan-Jung ship debris will cost a kidney. So yeah, its insurance price might be even higher than it is now. I have seen a couple kill medals with these ships, 8, 12 billion, 60, I think one was like 26 billion. I've seen a variety of kills. All of them had different builds. All of them were cursed. So, yeah. But that's basically how it looks how the insurance price looks on this ship. Now, did a high insurance price ever stop me from flying a ship? Oh no. I'm already known. Well, I used to be known. Now I don't really fly expensive ships. Well, Actually, I do fly some expensive ships. My navies have crazy integrations, so that's one thing, I guess. Well, that's one of the few remaining ships that I have with insane integrations, but I don't mind flying ships with high IP price. If you're confident with your game knowledge, with your skill, insurance price doesn't really matter much to you, because you are not going to be losing the ship in most cases if you know what you're doing. Knowing when to pull out is important, and I know that sounds, yeah, well, actually, you know, it's important to know when to pull out. You don't want mistakes to happen. So that basically also applies to Eve. You need to know what you can take, when you can take, how you can take. Basically, you have to play smart, and if you play smart, the insurance price is not going to bother you at all, honestly, since your ship is not going to go down. Or if it does go down, you can learn from mistakes and basically never repeat the mistakes again. So overall, piloting skills, overall game knowledge, and things like that are extremely important. And that's why I'm comfortable with flying ridiculously expensive ships, because I know that the chance of that ship blowing up is never zero. There's always a chance that you can blow up, but the chance is so small that it's insignificant. I haven't had a big... my last big loss was I think the status. That was due to bug, and it wasn't a PvP loss. It was just something that, you know, I knew it would happen. I knew exactly what happened, and I didn't listen to myself. So every time you get that feeling that something is not looking right, it usually isn't right. So you should listen to that sixth sense, as I like to call it, because that sixth sense, your subconscious knows things that your conscious state doesn't know. So you should always listen to that little voice telling you that you should pull out on time. And I started to listen to that voice a lot more lately, and my overall performance over the last year or so definitely improved a lot. So that voice is important. Well, I think I'll be docking when this ship is destroyed. Overall, very happy with how this ship handles. It is fast. It is agile for a battlecruiser. It is also interesting in its own way, honestly. It does feel like the Nestor before the buffs. Before the Nestor was changed, it felt the same. It felt like a ship that's kind of out of place. Although in this case, you can actually use the bomber attack, the implants on this thing and do a lot of damage, or basically use it as a logistic ship. But at the moment, this thing does feel like the Nestor before it was buffed. So there's a good chance that this thing is going to be buffed further down the road. There's going to be a good chance that in the next updates that they will rework, change, or when they add more Yan-Jung ships, they'll definitely tweak them out to be more competitive. But as it stands now, I'm pretty happy with this weird ship. I'm always a fan of weird ships. I like to make weird ships work, and I'm glad that I made this thing work. Very happy with its performance so far. It is nothing spectacular, but for what it is in this current situation, with everything that we have offered, or should I say with very little to no Decomposer stuff available, it's actually really solid, and it can only get better from now on, especially when we get new decomposing plants and things, you know, along those lines, like buffs and stuff like that. But this ship has potential, and the overall Yan-Jung ships have a lot of potential. And maybe down the road, when they release more of the Yan-Jung ships, maybe the meta will change. Maybe players will start to prefer these ships over the normal ships, because they might have something that is going to perform better than on the Apocalypse. They might have something more attractive than lasers, for example. But we will see what will happen. I'm definitely going to be covering those ships when they are out, since that's what I like to do. That's what I love to do, and my job is to basically give you guys the detailed analysis. I can't speak. My apologies. The detailed analysis. There we go. Of any new ship added to the game. So with that being said, if you want to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. And with that being said, stay safe, fly safe, and as always, I'll see you next time.